That's us now live, Paul.
Okay, good morning and welcome to the third business meeting in relation to two compulsory purchase orders in relation to Falkirk Council, Denny Eastern Access Road. My name is Paul Coquette. I'm an inquiry reporter appointed to report to ministers in relation to the two orders. The parties today are principally represented by Jackie McGuire of Brodie's, representing Falkirk Council as promoters of the orders, Alistair McKee, Anderson Strathern on behalf of the Calendar Trust, the statutory objector, and Martin Hall, good morning Martin, of Davison and Robertson representing John Taylor. I think Jack McGuire is accompanied by Douglas Blythe and Kevin Collins from Falkirk Council, and may be joined by a colleague of Jackie's later on, and Martin Hall is joined by Neil Muneer on behalf of John L. Taylor. Before we go into the substantive business this morning, I'll just mention, as I've emailed out to parties and said already, that I made an unaccompanied site visit to the subjects on the 3rd of September, at which I saw the site from the house at phase 1. I walked along the public path from my dove farm through to Denny High School and saw Denny Cross as well on that unaccompanied site visit on that date. For this morning's meeting, I'd circulated an agenda, which I think you've all seen, and I think to a limited extent, or certain extent, has been superseded because Jamie has been sending various documents in since that agenda was issued, so there may be less to discuss in that respect. But I was also going to add to the agenda an item in relation to the non-statutory objector, Gordon Jack, who had indicated previously he doesn't wish to participate in any of the oral proceedings, but has submitted responses to what the council had indicated as an answer to his non-statutory objection. The objection itself has been seen by Brodie's, and it's on the DPA case management system for other parties wish to look at it, but we'll deal with that perhaps as item 5 on the agenda. So unless anybody has any other suggestions for the agenda itself, so please indicate. If not, I would just maybe go to Jackie to give us an update on outstanding statutory objections and take the rest of the agenda from there.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm pleased to advise that we have, as of yesterday, concluded missives with both statutory objectors, which refer to agreed terms of agreement and licences to occupy, and understand that Mr Hall and Mr McKee are intending to advise you this morning that subsequent to the close of this meeting, the objections on behalf of the statutory objectors are to be withdrawn.
Okay, thank you. That's very useful to get the update. I just turn to Alistair and Martin just for any comments they want to make about that, and we can work from there through the end of the agenda. And Jamie Dunn has just joined us.
Thank you, Jackie, and good morning all. I can confirm, sir, that Calendar Trust as statutory objectors have reached agreement with the promoter, Falkirk Council, and they will be removing their statutory objections to both compulsory purchase orders later today.
Thank you. And Martin?
Yeah, good morning. Likewise, I can confirm that John Taylor will be removing his objection to both CPOs in the course of today.
Okay, well, very, very grateful for that. That may make the rest of the meeting a bit shorter than I otherwise have done, for obvious reasons. And I'm grateful for the efforts made from parties to continue the discussions that I know you all indicated from the very start that none of the objectors, including Allied Homes, who withdrew their objection at an earlier stage, were opposed in principle of the scheme. But I know it sometimes takes a little bit of discussion and effort to get to a satisfactory resolution, but I'm grateful for the confirmation that has been received, and that will obviously help me in my timings of reporting from now on. That leaves actually just one or two questions I think I can maybe sort of work through with Jackie and possibly Jamie, who's been sending me various documents that will let me then proceed to complete my reports. As I'll come in a moment to the objection, the non-statutory objection from Mr. Jack, the outstanding issues in terms of documentation and the like that I have, some of which I've alluded to in the agenda for today's meeting, and this is just to clarify from my own understanding. We'd spoken at the beginning of a possibility of a joint statement or otherwise confirmation in relation to service on the affected parties, both as represented in these meetings and in the objections, and other than that, in the course of discussions, I think I've received a document setting out the variations to the order. I think that's drafted by Mr. Blythe, who's on the call today.
Yep.
Happy to have the author of that report there. That's FC 34, and we also have a tracked version of the first schedule and a clean version of the first schedule of the first order, which have been submitted as well. So I just wanted maybe if we could just confirm, principally Jackie, but also within the hearing of the objectors' agents, just confirmation that as to whether there's anything further intended to be submitted by way of statement of full certification of service of documents, or whether you're content collectively to rely on those documents that are now with me, and I can obviously reference.
Okay, as far as I'm aware, there are no issues regarding service of the second
Sure.
compulsory purchase order or notification of that. And I think Mr. Blythe has completed the certificate that is required to issue to Transport Scotland at the point the CPO has been sent to them prior to being forwarded to DP, certifying that notification has been duly carried out. So I don't think we were intending to issue anything further. And I think the issues in relation to the earlier order were discussed at a prior pre-examination meeting, and the various parties have confirmed that they now have no issues. So I would have thought the record of the pre-exam meeting would have been sufficient.
Yes, I think that's right. And as I say, I've now got a tracked version of the first schedule and a clean version of the first schedule, which parties will have an opportunity to look at on the CMS or have had sent to them. And that, I think that's how I would intend to complete the report in that respect. I'll come on in a second to just a little bit of clarification of a couple of issues as to what, if confirmed, the order should actually say, primarily the first order. But I'm assuming that neither objectors have any difficulty with proceeding in that way. In which case, the only questions I have, and this may be coming from Mr. Blythe at some point in the future, is in the agenda. I think I've been sent a copy of the newspaper advertisement in the Falkirk Herald of the number 1 order. It'd be quite useful if you may just send me the one for the number 2 order as well, so I can refer to them both at the same time. And ditto for the committee. I think I've seen the 2 committee reports in relation to the original order. I don't think, I mean, you'd be correct, maybe it's in the system already. I don't think I've seen a note either of the committee recommendation or of the committee minute confirming the number 2 order. And again, just for completeness, I'm going to refer to each of those documents. Number 1, if you have those readily available for number 2, that'd be helpful to have.
Okay, just to clarify, I think the copy of the advertisement for the number 2 order would also have been sent to Transport Scotland along with the compulsory purchase order itself when it was sent there prior to being sent to DP. So it should be in the TS records. It may be quicker and easier to obtain that from them, but if it's not, we'd be quite happy to make a further copy available.
No, that's fine.
On the second point, there isn't a separate committee minute. We looked at this in some detail. The initial report that went to committee simply asked for authority to acquire all of the land that's comprised in both compulsory purchase orders, and the view was taken that that was sufficient authority to proceed with the second CPO, because we weren't adding any additional land into, if you like, the combined content of both orders.
No, that's understood. That's fine. In that case, nothing more needed in that respect. And I think the last question for me in relation to documentation, and I'm again grateful to Jamie for sending various things through, including the Falkirk Local Plan 2010. The most up-to-date one, of course, is the LDB 2020, which is FC 24. I don't think that's been submitted as yet. And if that were possible, just to submit that, just as as I say, the most updated LDP, that would keep
And do you
in line.
require that in hard copy?
No.
No, just
No.
a link would suffice, would it?
A link would be perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's absolutely fine. And so the only other question I think that I have before we go on to Mr. Jack relates then to the report, if recommended confirmation, or if not, nevertheless confirmed by ministers, will require a kind of narrative of the changes in relation to the number 1 order. I think number 2 order, you're seeking confirmation as it is without modification. That I think makes sense. So on the first order, there's the new first schedule, which I've discussed already. There's the plan. Now, the plan, just again to be clear from my perspective, I think, Jackie, on the 25th of March, you sent me an updated plan taking out plot 7, 8 and 9 and modifying plot 4.
Yes.
That I'm taking as the plan to be substituted. And the reason I'm slightly labouring that point is there was an earlier plan which we, and I think it's we in DPA, we have on our system as FC05, but that's a plan dating back to the 25th of August 2020. And that obviously has been superseded by the plan you sent 9 months after that. And so on assumption that it's the 25th of March 2021 plan that you wish to be confirmed as the modified plan, I was intending effectively to substitute for your FC05 document, which is described as the updated plan, not FC05 as we have it on the CMS, somewhat confusingly, but the 25th March plan. So I labour that point just to make sure I'm not going off track on that. But that I think is the position in terms of the plan to be attached.
I believe that's position as well. I think I can see Douglas. He's a bit murky, but I can see him nodding in agreement.
Yeah. Well, if that transpires not to be the case, you can let us know as soon as possible after the meeting.
I'll let you know either way. We'll email
yes,
us regardless, just to
that'll be
confirm
fine.
the position.
Okay. And my third question, and I know some of the discussions with the objectors were in relation to the question of temporary access and the like. The number 1 order did reference temporary accommodation works and the like. So I guess my question, you don't have to answer it now, is whether in seeking confirmation of this, you would be seeking any modification of the text in the, I think it's paragraph 1, if you bear with me a second, I've got it up on screen, of the original CPO, which is at paragraph 2, and it references there areas designated for use as temporary construction access areas, and there's reference there also to some of the plots that are now no longer to be proceeded. My question, I guess, is whether in the confirmed order, if indeed confirmed, you want any change to the text of that paragraph there to reflect the subsequent discussions and the issues around temporary access, which I know were issues of concern now resolved. So if there were wording that you would prefer to be contained in a modified order to reflect that point, again, it'd be useful if you could let us have that as soon as you were able.
We'll take a look at that, but I don't envisage that we will be making any changes to the wording of the original order. I mean, the plots that we refer to as being required for those purposes are still required for those purposes. There's been no change to the council's intentions with regard to those plots.
Yeah, okay, that's useful. The only reason I mention it is it was at least at an earlier stage in the process an issue as to whether it was competent to take land temporarily. So if you could just look at that, and I don't want to kind of delve into matters that are settled, but just if you just look at the wording of that and see if there are any concerns that you have.
Okay, we'll come back on that.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. The last issue for me then is in relation to the further points made by Mr. Jack in his email that was circulated to you. I'll invite comments from you as to next steps in relation to that. I should flag up that it did appear to me that in addition to reiterating some of his earlier concerns, I noted 2 additional questions that he raised, one of which was a general kind of open question about noise, and the second was a question about a potential to be resolving issues in relation to access to the M875. But before I comment on that, I wonder whether there's anything that you wanted to say at this stage, and whether what the council's intentions are by making any further comment, and what that might mean for further procedure.
Okay, well, I think the first point the council would make is it's obviously keen to draw this process of corresponding backwards and forwards with Mr. Jack to a close as soon as reasonably possible. There are some points he makes in his email which are not new grounds of objection, but which the council think perhaps misstate the position that it is set out in its response to his initial objection as augmented by his second email. And it would like the opportunity to respond very briefly to those, but just to draw a line under it at that stage. In the email of the 10th of September, I have also flagged up that there are a couple of issues which I would perceive as being new grounds of objection, or be considered to be new grounds of objection. The first is in relation to Route 2, and I think it's the same point in the email that you're referring to, where he goes on to suggest that DEAR should be used to deal with a whole raft of issues on the road network in the Falkirk area. And the council sees that as being a new ground of objection. These matters weren't raised before. And the second one is, yes, the issue of noise nuisance in relation to the sports coaching on the playing fields, which wasn't previously raised. And if these were matters that you're prepared to consider in the course of your report, then the council would wish the opportunity to respond to the matters that Mr. Jack has raised. But they are new grounds of objection, and it's very late in the proceedings for these to be being raised.
I think I would say, I mean, it's up to obviously the content and form of your response to that. I think I would say in relation to the road matters of the M875, my feeling at present is that I need to report on the scheme before me, and the changes affecting the slip road onto the motorway are ones that would go beyond where the Eastern Access would reach the A883, and therefore is something that is very close to, and you might argue that it makes some sense that a bigger and wider approach might have been taken, but it's not the scheme that's before me for reporting.
That's essentially the council's position, that the scheme is designed for a range of purposes, but those purposes don't encompass the points that have been made in this particular paragraph of Mr. Jack's email. And if that is the reporter's position, then the council might simply settle on responding to that point in that manner. I mean, I think that in essence is what the council would be saying in response to that paragraph, rather than providing any detailed response in the individual points that he makes about double bends and whatever.
Indeed. Well, that's understood. In relation to noise, I mean, I suppose my feeling is if there's a short and easy answer to it, it might be as well to submit it. But I think it is something that has been raised late, and I too sympathise with the desire now to progress with matters, especially as the statutory objections have now been withdrawn. I'm still open-minded at this stage as to what I will do when you submit your comments. I think there's a lot to be said for drawing a line under that correspondence at this stage, but that depends what you say, of course. If you in turn raise all sorts of new issues, that might be different. But if you're simply responding to the points that are there, again, at this stage, I'm probably inclined to draw a line and treat these issues as being fully and sufficiently aired, with your comments, say within 14 days from today, or whatever period you think is helpful.
We've had a discussion with Mr. Collins and Mr. Blythe prior to today's meeting, and it's not the council's intention to be raising anything new by way of response to the points that have been raised by Mr. Jack. As I've said, there may be a couple of matters that he references that we would probably just want to clarify the council's position, but that would be simply referring back to documents that are already with you. And as I said, perhaps a very brief comment on the Route 2 issues that he raises along the lines of what we've just discussed. And I don't imagine that if you want us to pick up on the noise pollution point, I don't see that being more than a few lines.
Yeah, no, I think that'll be fine. I think, as I say, if there's something can just be indicated for the record, that this is an issue. I mean, it would astonish me if it hadn't been considered. If there is a ready answer to that can just deal with that in a few lines.
I think the council's position broadly, if I can be frank, is it's a non-issue, and I think the response will be broadly along those lines.
Well, I look forward to that. In that case.
Although perhaps phrased a bit more eloquently than that.
Yeah, okay, well that's fine. Is there anything else in relation to the Mr. Jack objection in that case that you want to raise?
I don't think so. You know, we know what you say about the lateness of these matters being raised, and you've got an outline of what the council's response is likely to be. And I think the only point I would emphasise, and I understand that you're sympathetic towards it already, is that we do really feel that a line has to be drawn under this and enable you to go on with writing your report.
Well, indeed. Okay, well, thank you for that. Is there anything else on behalf of the now or soon to be former statutory objectors that you want to raise for the purpose of this meeting, or have we covered all the things we need to?
I'm content, sir. I have nothing further to add.
Nor do I. I've got nothing more to add.
Okay, that's great. Okay, well, I thank you again for your support and assistance in helping me through this process. I now will subject anything further the council may come up with in relation to Mr. Jack. I'll now proceed to write the report as required and send it to ministers to Transport Scotland just as soon as I can. So thanks again for your cooperation. And have a good long weekend when it comes. And Alistair, I think you're going to leave next week. So hopefully,
yes,
hopefully you'll get away, maybe somewhere sunny with a bit of luck. But either way, pleasant.
Probably in the garden.
In the garden, well, that'll be a good place to be. Okay, thank you, folks.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Bye now.